ride a great aerial chariot, the best among the best of the aerial chariots, shining with the name Pushpaka with the rays of precious stones and incapable of traveling long distances. Warning. This presentation is intended for authorized personnel only. Please ensure surrounding terminals, doors, and viewing environments are secured. Unauthorized viewing of this and sharing of this presentation is prohibited. This is for your own safety, as the sharing of this presentation to the wider public can attract unwanted attention that could put you and loved ones at risk. Because of this, the following presentation has been labeled as a possible dangerous memetic hazard. MPNIA warrant notice. The information in this presentation was provided by the following organizations and people: Lockheed Martin, Northrop Corporation, Alt Propulsion, Tech Valley Science Center, Mark McCandlish, Kenneth Shoulders, John Iwatzko, Alexei Cherkakov, Viktor Grebennikov, Thomas Townsend Brown, Chris Fazzi, Ian Judy, Oleg, Michael Zoras, John Mark Palma, and Alexander Dorokov. This presentation was reviewed, edited, and approved by Arctic Technologies, the Ministry of Propaganda, News and Information of America, and the U.S. Department for the Preservation of Alternate Energy. Distributed by Polybius KEGS TV, formerly known as the Goldstein Book Journal, this presentation only describes the design and structure of the anti-gravity craft and not the science and mechanism how it works in depth. Anti-gravity and G engines by the U.S. Department for the Preservation of Alternate Energy. Here we have a little table of contents. Seventeen. All right. What is anti-gravity? A definition by the DPAE of anti-gravity is a force or effect that directly opposes the effect of a gravitational vector via an opposing facing vector, thrust, push, or canceling force. However, this definition can be too broad, as by this definition, the simple act of jumping or the launch of a rocket can be called anti-gravity, as the force in question can oppose the effect of Earth's gravity even for a short time. Because of this, the DPAE has issued a new definition of anti-gravity: a force or effect that can oppose the gravitational force of Earth in a non-vacuum conditions, does not use traditional methods like chemical ignition or wind propellant, i.e. rocket engines, jet/turbo engines, and propellers, and can allow a craft to maneuver without traditional aerodynamics, relying on the force of electromagnetism as a primary source for the effect of anti-gravity. What is the Byfield-Brown effect and electrogravitics? The Byfield-Brown effect is an electrical phenomenon where an asymmetric capacitor made of a positive cathode and negative anode with a dielectric in between them, when exposed to high voltage DC, the asymmetric capacitor will then experience a directional thrust primarily toward the cathode. Pioneered by inventor Thomas Townsend Brown in the 1930s with various patents. DPAE-funded research for anti-gravity has proposed the use of the Byfield-Brown effect. The DPAE has classified two main types of electrogravitics: ionic thrust and advection diffusion. Ionic thrust uses two electrodes, one pointed/thin cathode and one round/wide anode. Positive ions are created from the cathode and attracted to the oppositely charged anode, dragging neutral air molecules, forming an air current which can lift the craft up. Advection diffusion uses two electrodes of different surface area and size with a dielectric in between them to form a field gradient differential. An area of high energy pressure below and low pressure above the electrodes. This creates a motion in direction of the low pressure. Other types of anti-gravity, according to John Iwatzko, there are up to 50 different types of anti-gravity, though some of them do bleed into each other. Those are electrostatic levitation, ionic asymmetric thrust, bifield Brown asymmetric thrust, electrohydrodynamic vortex levitation, magnetic constraint attraction, magnetic monopivot centrifuge, diamagnetic superconducting, magnetic gyroscope, diamagnetic levitation, magnetic suspension/repulsion with Earth's field, electrodynamic levitation, electromagnetic wave and field with DC pulse levitation, gyroscopic EM levitation, acoustic levitation, photonic solar mechanical pressure propulsion. And by the way, before I continue, there could also be a 16 version called magnetic hydrodynamics. How our anti-gravity works. The DPAE has issued a production of a craft that utilizes methods of advection diffusion 1, 3, 4, 12, 13, and 15 by RQ technologies. Information gathered primarily from TVSC's Ian Judy, Andrew Arigma, Mark McCandlish, and Alexander Dorokov. The craft will be given the name of the Diod Vimana using a method called the flux asymmetric field distortion system. The flux asymmetric field distortion system. The FAFDS works by using advection diffusion via the use of two conductive plates, either made of pure copper or aluminum plates, though for better efficiency, the plates can also be what is known as AZ31X laminate, which is made of copper, magnesium zinc, and bismuth. The plates will be of different sizes to form an asymmetric field, a small plate above and a larger plate below. A dielectric with a high K value is placed in between the plates to prevent short-circuiting between the plates, increase capacitance, and form an asymmetric field itself. Materials for the dielectric are preferred to be of a glass or crystal, including normal glass, plexiglass, acrylic, quartz crystal, Rochelle salt crystal, titanium oxide or dioxide, or Herkimer quartz diamond. The use of an extra electrolyte activated carbon underneath the negative anode can also help with good ion movement and electrical conductivity. Images are from Alexander Dorokov and reviewed by Alexei Turkakov. They all depict asymmetric capacitor with a positive cathode in small surface area made of a copper or copper laminate, a dielectric either plexiglass or acrylic, and a negative anode of activated carbon often paired with copper/copper laminate. Images specifically depict Viktor Korpenikov's flying platform. So here we have a copper plate. Right here we have a dielectric, maybe of acrylic, and right here we have activated carbon. In this version right here, it's the same thing: copper, dielectric, then copper, and then activated carbon, followed by mesh and fabric as support. Images from the document platform guide. Images depict another possible design for Korpenikov's platform. Though the design is different, similar elements are still there. The use of positive and negative cathodes and anodes, electrodes, with honeycomb possibly being used as a dielectric, separating each section with cotton layers, powered by an inverter and Tesla coil. So here we have, similar to the other design, there's positive and negative cathode, and a honeycomb separating the two. Though unlike the other one, which used 3 to 4 materials, here it's a repeating section. We're going to get into this later on, but here you can see the power supply, which we're also going to get later on, as well as this little section right here. Images are by a Bulgarian inventor whose name is still unknown. Because of this, he's usually more well known as just the Bulgarian. And for the record, some of the videos he shows clearly do use special effects and are clearly not real. However, the reason why we're going to go with the design is due to the consistency of it. Remember, this design uses electrodes and dielectrics, and uses a very believable power supply of this right here. Because of this is hence why the DPAE has trusted in using this design. Power supply, converters, inverters, and Tesla coils. According to the document, which will be known as DU, the craft is powered by a 9-volt to 10/kilovolt to 10/20 kilovolt voltage converter. The craft has an electric breakdown voltage of 20 to 25 kilovolts. According to the document, is powered by a 12 volt to 5/10 kilovolt voltage inverter and a Tesla coil. Converters change AC to DC, and inverters change DC to AC. The CPS platform uses a 12 volt batteries whose voltage go into an inverter and turn that DC into AC, which goes to power a Tesla coil and then to the craft. The DU platform uses 9 volt batteries, which I presume go to an inverter, power a Tesla coil to step up the voltage, and then go to a converter, possibly a Cockcroft voltage multiplier, to turn that AC into DC, then to the craft. The platform is activated by a briefly applied high voltage. Like we said, this specific design right here allegedly requires 10 to 20 kilovolts. Started by a start button in the handle, which then goes to a battery and the voltage converter. A converter turns AC to DC. However, you can't get AC from a 9 volt battery, only DC, implying that the AC is running through the system for some reason, possibly to power the Tesla coil. And the reason why I'm saying this is, for the record, the document which describes this design right here does not describe an inverter or AC. It only describes the voltage converter. However, the existence of the converter implies that there is AC running through the system for whatever reason, implying that there could be some sort of AC input, possibly for a Tesla coil, but we're not sure. Here we have a much more detailed translated version for the platform itself. Here we have a copper laminate, which is the positive, the top one. Then we have a dielectric, in this case it's a acrylic. Then we have a negative, it's larger than the one above, so we have another copper laminate, this is the negative, followed up by a activated carbon, which once again can help with electricity flow and electricity storage. And this whole system is supported by a fabric and metal mesh. Here we have the power system for the other design. A 12 volt battery is connected to an inverter, which steps up the voltage to 5 to 10 kilovolts AC, which goes to power a Tesla coil. Here we have the battery, inverter, Tesla coil. This system is quite unique, as it involves actually you, the user, becoming part of the system. One of the copper pipes that has a tight plastic cylinder, this one, the positive pipe, is used to regulate resistance and current coming through the panels. It determines the height and force of the anti-gravity field. This design requires the user to connect to a circuit, possibly as an electrical regulator, but I'm not really sure with that. We're gonna get into this part in the next. Here we're just describing the power supply that's used. Going back to the other design, according to Grebennikov himself and multiple sources, he used these fan blades underneath the platform to control the craft. Grebennikov used blades, which are often interpreted as block panels, to control the direction, speed, and movement of the craft, depending on how open or closed the blades were. He allegedly was able to move these blades with a pulley system found inside of the handguard of the craft. This craft uses a similar mechanism. However, instead of fan blades, it uses these aluminum triangles, which are color-coded as green. The CPS craft, which is called, I got that wrong, but the SPV craft uses a similar mechanism, but instead of fan blades, it uses movable aluminum triangles. The aluminum triangles are meant to control the power and field, and hence control the height and speed of the craft. According to the document, the left triangle, this one, moves forward and backwards on a bearing connected to the given pipe. At first I was kind of confused on what it meant by moving forwards and backwards. But looking at this image, specifically this one right here, you can clearly see this little part right here, which is not on this side, implying that this, I think that's what I meant by a bearing, meaning this pipe right here moves forward and backwards like this, which in turn moves this forward and backwards. And it's kind of hard to tell, but you can kind of see that same little thing on this right here that's not on this one right here, if that makes any sense. If you look at here, there's not that right there, it's not there. And I think you can even tell it a little bit right there. It's who knows, but allegedly moving these quote-unquote block panels can help you control the craft and the power of the craft itself. Going back to here, we have some real-world examples. This one right here is a replication, like a one-to-one replication. It's not the actual craft, but a replication of Gripenikov's original craft. From what I know, this is in a museum. Once again, this is just a replication. It's not actually the actual craft. According to Gripenikov, he ended up burying the original craft in a Russian forest, which was allegedly discovered and confiscated by authorities. These ones were allegedly built by the Bulgarian, actually. I don't know which one is which. I know we have the Bulgarian design, and then we have some other guy who copied off the Bulgarian. So I don't know which one is which, but this is how this craft right here would look like in real life. The counter-oscillating vortex emitter. The power supply for the Gripenikov platform are good for one-person craft. However, if we want more like a crew-size craft, we're going to need a larger power supply. That's where the counter-oscillating vortex ecton emitter or COVI engine comes in, a type of over-unity device that works on the principle of magnetic hydrodynamics, Casimir, and Lorentz forces. It consists of a central column, a flywheel and Tesla coil around the middle of the column, and a capacitor right at the bottom. Information for the production of the COVI engine was primarily gathered by Mark McCandlish, Chris Fazzi, Thomas Bader, John Iwasasko, and Michael Zolres. It is a simplified description of the ARV Fluxliner according to Brad Sorensen, Lockheed Martin ScarWorks employees, and Northrop employees. The COVI engine main column is called the amplifier. It is made up of two rotating cylinders made up of fused quartz, one inside the other, like Russian dolls. The cylinders are partially evacuated and filled with mercury vapor. Around both cylinders are coiled copper wire connected to 24-volt marine batteries. A voltage is passed through the coils, causing electromagnetic field to form through the coil. Mercury is, of course, liquid metal, and due to a phenomenon known as the Lorentz force, this mercury will begin to rotate and spin due to that electromagnetic field. And it will begin to rotate and hence cause the cylinders to rotate. The innermost cylinder is connected to a gearbox, so when the cylinder starts to rotate, it causes the outer cylinder to rotate in the opposite direction. At the bottom and top of the cylinders are turbine blades and gaps, which helps flow the mercury up and down through the two cylinders, forming a tornado-like vortex inside of the cylinders. The mercury, when high enough power supply, the mercury will then begin to ionize and form a plasma. The counter-rotating field will release pulsing AC, which is picked up by the primary coil around the center of the column, which is powered by a secondary coil and step up the voltage and field and forms the main field of the craft. At the top and bottom of the cylinders are pointed cathode and rounded anode to create a direct electric path through the inner cylinder. This can also result in the formation of ectons, also known as exotic vacuum objects, which are toroidal clusters of electrons with 10 to the power 13 electrons, which are, I think, 1 trillion electrons in one cluster alone. These ectons can hold larger charges and pass more entry through the system. At the top of the inner cylinder is a Venturi-style opening, which is kind of like, imagine the opening of a bottle, how it's narrow and slowly widens as it goes down. So that's what it is. At the top of the inner cylinder is a Venturi-style opening. When ionized mercury flows in, it forms a rotating toroidal ring of plasma that forms similar to a smoke ring. These rings, plus the ions, plasma, and ecton can all form their own EM field, which can power the coils, causing more rotation, hence more ionization. It's similar to a fire, burns fuel, it grows, burns more oxygen, which in turn causes the fire to grow, burn more fuel, etc. It's a self-sustaining system. This could ultimately lead to a feedback loop where the system is not reliant on an external power source, meaning they're not relying on the 24-volt batteries anymore. Now, that may sound good. However, this can be quite dangerous and even cause the whole system to literally explode in a runaway reaction. The rings plus the rotating fields are the ones who form the pulsing AC, which feeds the whole system. Note, this is not a free energy or perpetual motion device. This could be quite confusing to people, but the reason why it's not considered perpetual motion is because a quote-unquote real perpetual motion device is closed. It creates its own energy out of nothing. Well, this is open. It's an open system that has multiple stuff. And going back to the fire analogy, it's like a fire. The fire grows, consumes more oxygen, which burns more fuel, which helps the fire grow, and like that. It makes a feedback loop, but ultimately the system will run out of energy. So it's not perpetual motion. So keep that in mind. At the bottom or hull of the craft or of the column is a solid state transformer that can turn that pulsing AC into DC, which can then power the capacitor array, which is possibly made up of AZ31X, and form the larger main asymmetric field itself that we need to lift the craft up via advection diffusion. Around the outside center of the column and inside diameter of the Tesla coil is a flywheel that serves two functions. One is for gyroscopic stabilization. As it spins, it can stabilize the craft, and the other is for electrical generation. The wheel works similar to a homopolar generator. It's driven and spun by the EM field created by the central column, and is rotated on magnetic bearings. This is so it can be much more efficient at spinning. Conductive brushes are at the edge of the wheel, collecting charge as the wheel spins, acting as a unipolar generator / transmission, supplying static charge in millions of volts to the hull of capacitors. The amplifier can then control the charge, which controls the craft. The craft is able to lift by repulsive / attractive forces of the fields, interacting with virtual particles and the Lorentz forces. The amplifier section is similar to Kenneth Shoulder's US patent 5018180A. It's a bit cut off there at the bottom, but yeah. Once again, this presentation does not go in depth into the science and how it works. All you have to know is that the field created by the craft interacts with virtual particles and the Lorentz force, and plus the Casimir force. Here we have real illustrations by Mark McCandlish on the amplifier central column and counter-oscillating vortex tecton emitter as a whole. As a whole form of the ARV flux liner, as well as a patent page for Kenneth Shoulder's Evo generator. So right here we have the patent page for the Evo generator, which is considered, Evo stands for exotic vacuum objects, which we established are as another name for ectons. So this is an ecton generator, which according to Mark McCandlish is an over unity device. This is an over unity device, which we're going to get into later. Here we have designs of the two columns. Here we have the two columns here. We have the turbine blades that help flow the mercury up and down. Here we have much more turbine blades. Here we have the gearbox, which is connected to the inner cylinder, which rotates the outer cylinder. Here we have the Venturi style opening. So when mercury flows in through here, it goes in through here and starts spinning, creating the vortex rings. So it's basically like a giant fluorescent light, is essentially what it is. That's actually how some light bulbs work. They have mercury inside, and when electricity is passed through them, it causes the light bulb to light up. So it's basically a giant fluorescent mercury light. Basically what it is. It's unique in the sense that it's spinning, constantly and creating toroidal rings. Here we have much more drawings, this time on the flywheel. Here we have the flywheel spinning due to the electromagnetic field. Here we have the brush collecting charge. Here we have the two central columns and the copper wiring going through and around the two cylinders. Here we have them forming the field of the craft itself. Here we have another detailed image of the ecton emitter or evo generator. Here it contains a cathode and anode, and charge is collected via the coil, I think, where ectons are emitted here and rushed down here. Ectons can only exist for like I think 10 nanoseconds, but in that time they can collect large amounts of charge and release a greater output of energy than the input, hence why it's called over unity device. Over here we have an alleged other design for the ecton emitter, the evo generator. This one uses a fuel which is not described in this version, but I'm assuming it could use a similar fuel. Once again, this works similar to this, so it's possible that in this case the fuel for this is the mercury. So here could have something similar that could possibly serve a similar purpose, but we don't know. An over-unity device is an electrical device whose output energy is greater than the input energy. This right here is an over-unity circuit that can possibly be used in the one-person craft that we discussed earlier. This is just a little simple circuit that I ended up discovering that I thought would be a nice little addition to this. That I ended up recommending that this should add. It's not a whole lot of information, but it's a nice. Though maybe we can connect this to the transformer, which is connected to the converter or inverter, which goes here. Here we have a little Tesla coil, capacitors. Let's talk about the G engines now. What are G engines and how they relate? A G engine is an electrical device that uses specific geometrical arrangements to serve a specific purpose, such as to cause an effect or force by affecting itself or an area. There are four main types classifications for G engines: Thurable, Fresnel, Astra, and Vimana. Thurable, a device that indiscriminately affects an area of a given radius. The effects from the device can range from positive to negative. Examples include the Kozyrev mirror, rotating orgone pyramids, and the thunderstorm generator. Fresnel is a device that is similar to a Thurable, but is more direct and affects a specific targeted location or object. Examples include cloudbusters, the Markham machine, multi-wave oscillators, and a core-shelled cannon. Astra, a subclassification of a Thurable, where it specifically negatively affects its targeted area. These are often nicknamed as skin burners. Examples include direct energy weapons. Vimana, a device that creates a force or effect that can rival Earth's gravity in normal atmospheric conditions. Examples include Krepenikov's platform, Schauberger implosion tech, ARV fluxliner, and the Kirkakov gravity flyer. G engines, however, have historically caused a number of health-related issues if not handled carefully. G engines can release high-frequency electromagnetic waves and radiation that can cause psychological/cognitive and physical harm to individuals, which can lead to lasting side effects to both people and environment where the device was activated, even if the device is no longer active or present in the area. Reported effects include dizziness, nausea, headaches, weight fluctuations, phosphenes, visual and auditory hallucinations, foreign gravitational presences, electrogustation, temporal anomalies like missing time, electrical shock, radiation sickness, burning up to the third degree, paranoia, extreme feelings and emotions like fear and dread, poltergeist/paranormal phenomena, also known as dynaphage manifestations, including UAPs, UFOs, and plasmoids, and possibly extrasensory perception. These effects have been well reported during the Russian Dixon experiments involving the Kozyrev mirror. These effects, though not yet confirmed nor understood, can spread similar to mimetic hazards, where contact with an infected individual or area and/or gaining knowledge or information about these effects, or even the G engine itself, can cause a possible placebo effect, where the affected individual may think they have one of the side effects, even if they didn't make any direct contact with the affected individual or area or device. For the safety of the general public and authorized personnel, warning labels and symbols have been issued by the DPAE to be placed on any G engine or related device. This is a G engine warning label right here, and it reads, "This device can cause psychological and physical harm to you and other people. Please stay clear of the device if you suspect or appears to be active/turned on. If you feel the following symptoms: dizziness, headaches, visual and auditory hallucinations, taste of metal or burning sensation, please stay as far from the device and contact DPAE personnel. For safety reasons, do not come close contact with non-personnel. Keep at least 5 feet apart and try not to go into detail on your symptoms or the device. Only to DPI personnel you may share detailed information on your symptoms or device." And down there we have the warning symbol, circle, and two, that's way I can describe them, hollowed out hemicircles or something like that. The U.S. Department for the Preservation of Alternate Energy, formerly known as the Military Energy Department for the United States of America. Its associates like Archaeo Technologies, the National Rifle Association, and SIGN, formerly known as WELT, have made great efforts in finding, obtaining, funding, and producing alternate forms of energy, technology, and even history, pouring countless resources into various fields of study like hydrofuel cells, biofuels, pyrolysis oils, cold fusion, plasma batteries, antigravity, etc. The DPAE and its funding company, the organization, their work to help humanity enter a real Tomorrowland. This is the end of this presentation. Thank you. I was the one who recommended for the making of this presentation, solely for safety reasons and informative to new personnel to the Department for the Preservation of Alternate Energy. Here we have some. Oh, before that, this presentation was primarily brought to you by the U.S. Department for the Preservation of Alternate Energy, the Ministry of Propaganda, News and Information of America, Archaeo Technologies, SIGN, and Polybius TV. Here we have our primary sources. I don't have QR codes right now, so you can either copy and paste or do that. There were multiple YouTube videos and as well as websites and documents.